Hello, everyone. My name is Tony Trippi, and I'm very happy to share with you that Patent Informatics and the Patent Information Users Group are collaborating on a series of instructional webinars. And over the years, PIUG has provided a number of educational courses, and one of the topics that many of the participants asked for more instructional help on was patent analytics and patent landscape reports. And so I'm extraordinarily happy to be working with the Patent Information Users Group to provide 4 webinars in a series that we're calling Preparing Patent Analytics Projects and Patent Landscape Reports, Hands-on Lessons. And the key aspect here is that, yes, we are going to go step by step through exactly how you provide this sort of information, how you do each of these individual tasks. So now, instead of talking to you about each unit individually, what we thought we'd do is give you an example. So give you a little bit of a justification for, well, why are you even going to be interested in learning more about patent analytics and generating patent landscape reports? And the best way to do that, I think, is to provide an example. And so we've got this case study here, and for those of you who know me or have seen me talk before, this is an example that I think is very illustrative of what patent analytics can do. And it goes back about 4 years ago when there were 2 companies, Jawbone and Fitbit, were looking to compete with one another in this emerging area of personal fitness monitors. And so I think everybody these days knows what a personal fitness monitor is, a Fitbit band, Apple Watch fits into that category. And so just this whole idea of the quantified self, that just began to emerge 4 to 5 years ago. And so when I put these materials together originally, I wanted to know what could we learn about this space by looking at patents. And so anytime you start a project like this, you have to think a little bit about, well, what is it that I'm studying? When it comes to a personal fitness monitor, these are the 4 aspects. And there's also some techniques that are involved. Now, this is going to become important because as we talk about building our collection and going ahead and putting together our data table, which is the subject of Unit 2, finalizing the data table using a pivot table to analyze the corresponding data, then you normally would have categories, and these are the categories that you might want to look at in this particular topic area. And this is just a picture. It was really neat when I put this together that I independently watched some teardown videos and pulled out all that information. And then I've actually found in one of the Jawbone patents a very similar list. And so that was a validation that I was on the right track. So the very first thing that I did in this particular case study was compared the 2 companies. Now, in this particular case, this is the Fitbit portfolio. And way back when, 4 years ago, they actually had a very, very, very small portfolio. And the reason I was even able to put this particular slide together is what we're going to cover in Unit 1 and Unit 2. Unit 1 is going to be specifically about doing patent family reductions and looking at assignee cleanups. And these are probably 2 of the most important aspects of doing a analytical project, patent analytics project, from a statistical perspective. Because if you don't do the patent family reduction properly, well, you're counting the number of countries that an applicant filed in as opposed to the number of inventions. And if you don't clean up the assignee names, well, then, they could be, their inventions could be assigned to other people or to misspellings. And so in Units 1, in particular, we're going to be dealing with looking at the patent family reductions and the assignee cleanups. Let me take, and this is even a better example here of the patent family reduction idea. The Alfcom or Jawbone portfolio, when I first looked at it, actually had almost 100 publications from around the world. But when you broke those down by various family reduction methods, it turned out to be 25 individual categories, or individual documents, I should say, broken into these 12 different categories. You can see them here: activity algorithms, device control, health systems, power management, etc. So the idea was I didn't want to analyze 100 documents. I really only wanted to analyze the 25 inventions that were incorporated within those 100 documents. And then I was able to, and in Unit 2, once we set up our data table, we've got our patent families reduced, we've got all of our assignees cleaned up, we've generated our categories. In this case, these are the examples of the 12 categories. Then we can use pivot tables to go ahead and look at a couple of different variables. In this particular case, this is the application date. So these were applied for in 2011, these were applied for in 2012, and you can see very nicely the differentiation between when they began, what they wanted to cover initially, and then what they covered in subsequent applications. And so once you have a nice data table, it's really pretty straightforward to use pivot tables. People kind of freak out a little bit about pivot tables, but they're really not that scary. And you can analyze as many columns or as many variables as you like with a pivot table, and we'll show you how to do all of that in Unit 2. So let me move on, and the idea here is not to share all of the work that was done here, per se, for the case study. Needless to say, what I ended up talking about for both companies was that I thought that both of them were, their portfolios were underdeveloped. So that was the bottom line. I wasn't terribly impressed with either one of their portfolios. And when I went ahead and put these materials together originally, my suggestion for both was that they needed to buy patents from others in order to bulk up their portfolios and protect themselves as things began to develop in this field and as the market grew. And part of the way you can find who else is out there that you might want to acquire is by looking at a bigger landscape. Now, this particular chart that you're looking at here, again, we'll cover this, the generation of this type of chart specifically in Unit 2. This is what, I call it a tri-panel chart. Some people have called it a spark chart. That's because there's a variety of information stacked on top of each other here. You've got this item here, which is basically the top assignees by their applications and grants. And then you've got something here that's called a spark line, which shows their progression over time, but just specifically for their row. It doesn't include anything else like a heat map might. And then you've got the table of actual data there. And once again, all of this is really simple to put together in Excel and with a pivot table. And we'll talk all about how to do that in Unit 2. Moving on, another analysis that I did was looking at citations. Now, depending on how popular the webinar is and how much requests we get for additional lessons, we may go ahead and schedule a few more, and one of those might be on citation analysis. In this particular study, what I found that was really fascinating was that there was this company here called Body Media that had a reasonable sized portfolio, but a lot more forward citations to their portfolio than other companies. Philips was actually the highest number, and they had a few, but not nearly as many as Body Media. And there's a company here, Valencell and Health Tech. There's a variety of companies here that might make good acquisition targets. Now, Unit 3, we're going to talk about spatial concept maps, and we've got one of those right here. And we're going to look at a couple of different methods to generate these. These are very, very popular with upper management. They tell very interesting stories, but there are certain lessons that need to be learned in order to put them together so that they make sense. There's a lot of complaints out there from people who say, look, I don't have any idea what in the world this map is saying. It's confusing, and I'm not able to tell a story because, frankly, anytime anybody asks me a question, I can't tell them what the heck's going on. And so that's part of what we're going to talk about in Unit 3 is how do you put these maps together with a variety of different tools and then ingrain them into your storytelling. That in Unit 4, we're going to talk about how do we put everything that we generated together into a story, into a presentation that's going to be persuasive and is going to speak to our decision makers or our clients about exactly what it is that we want them to be able to do next with this information. And so Unit 3 is on spatial concept maps. So as I mentioned, the whole idea of a presentation usually is to share your point of view, to share your analyses, to share your perspectives on what the next steps should be for your decision maker. And so there's a mechanism by which you put together presentations that really drive home the message on what those next steps should be. And in this particular case, what I wanted to demonstrate was that patent analytics was extraordinarily instrumental in being able to predict what was going to happen very shortly after I put these materials together. These slides will be available when you're downloading this or viewing this video. But what you can see is that, a few days, few weeks after I put these materials together and presented them for the first time at a PIUG annual conference, Jawbone acquired Body Media for $110 million. And that was the key takeaway from my presentation, that both of these companies needed to engage in a buying program, and that Body Media was the best portfolio that I saw that would fit their needs. And sure enough, Jawbone bought Body Media a few days later. Now, this is a coincidence. I had nothing to do with this. I wasn't working with either company. But this is not the first time I've seen this occur. This is not the first time that my clients have thought, well, we think we're going to go and buy this organization because they're the market leader. And I've gone back to them and said, yeah, but I don't really think they've got a good technology position based on their patents. And so I think you maybe ought to look at these guys instead. And oftentimes that's been persuasive. And my clients have gone ahead and purchased or partnered with other organizations. Now, the funny thing about this, too, and we won't spend a lot of time on this, is that, yes, in fact, there was patent litigation that took place. These companies both ended up suing one another. It was recently settled. But the bottom line was also, as far as Fitbit was concerned, they also bought a portfolio. In October of 2003, they bought the portfolio of a small New Jersey company called Switch to Health. And a number of the cases they ended up using in the subsequent litigation against Jawbone were the ones that they had acquired and then modified and filed continuations on and so on. So to wrap everything up, again, this is a 4-part webinar. We're going to be starting in January. There'll be additional information on registration, either for the entire course. If you sign up for all 4, PIUG is providing a discount. That's basically 1 free, so 3 for the price of 1. Otherwise, you can buy them individually. The first one, as I mentioned, will deal with the linear law of patent analysis, patent family reductions, and assignee cleanups. And again, that's going to be coming in January 2019. We'll be doing it live so that there's an opportunity for questions, and then the recording will be made available afterwards for people to purchase. The second webinar is going to be on pivot tables and using Microsoft Excel to generate charts, graphs, and tables. We're shooting for February for that. Generating spatial concept maps, shooting for March for that particular presentation. And then finally, producing patent landscape reports that will be read and used by senior management will be the topic of the 4th and final webinar that we're shooting for in the April timeframe. I can't tell you how excited I am to be working with PIUG to put this together and to make these materials available. Here on the last slide, we've just got some information about where you can go at the PIUG website to sign up for these. Please keep in mind that a few years ago, I wrote the guidelines for the preparation of patent landscape reports. You should have a copy of that document while looking at the webinar, because a lot of the material is going to be, again, this is hands-on. The guidelines is just a guideline, but this is going to be hands-on. I'm going to show you how to do this step by step. And then finally, for those of you who are interested in getting course credit, going through and developing your own patent landscape with me as an instructor, there is a course that I teach through the Illinois Institute of Technology and Chicago Kent Law. It's called IPMM 508. And for those of you who are interested in really getting into this topic beyond what we can do in webinars and really getting interactive and working with me as an instructor, producing your own landscape report, there's that option available as well. Again, thank you for your time, and I'm really looking forward to doing these webinars with PIUG and to seeing as many of you as possible. Of course, you can interact with me directly, Tony@patentinformatics.com, after you've viewed the webinar if you've got any additional questions. Thanks very much, and have a great day.